Introduced to the New World by the Europeans as involuntary collaborators in the process of colonization, enslaved Africans brought their rich culture, including religion and music. In countries like Brazil, the United States, and many others, they developed new musical techniques with new instruments, creating an extremely rich variety of musical genres. In the US, the main ones are jazz, blues, rhythm and blues, soul, rap, and even rock. In Brazil, 50 years ago, the explosion of the Black Rio movement inspired and raised the awareness of thousands of black youth to the sound of soul, especially as regards valuing their appearance, as black is beautiful. The following decade, it was followed in Rio de Janeiro by Charme, or the R&B movement. Welcome to CULTNE TV. Our guest today is an African-American R&B singer and composer who had a very successful career in the 1980s and 90s, not only in the United States, but also in Europe and Brazil. She has mastered in science by the North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, and HBCU, founded in 1891. Our guest is now active in the area of education as coordinator of the Program of Lead Achievement at Guilford Technical Community College in Greensboro, North Carolina. Winner of a gold disc in 1989 with Don't Make Me Over, she's back in Brazil for another show in Rio. We're going to have a conversation with singer, composer, and educator Sybil Lynch. Sybil,
Yes.
as many African-American singers, you started to sing in the church.
Yes.
How was it? Who took you there?
I grew up in the church. My mom, the funny thing is my mom's side of the family, they're singers. My cousin is the original member of the group In Vogue. My other cousin is the lead singer for Pieces of a Dream. And so I've got a long lineage of musicians and artists who have started. We started in the church. We had no other choice.
It's in your DNA?
Yeah, it's in our DNA. It's just you attend church, you participate in the events that are kind of in line with your gifts. And so for me, music was always, I grew up doing the play, this Easter plays and the different plays that we'd have. And so I could not help but get immersed in singing in choirs and being a part of that process. But it's the kind of the core of who I am, and it helps me to be able to deliver songs that have meaning to me and meaning to people. And so I think that faith, that foundation of church and that foundation of spirit is important, and it's always been important and will continue to be important. Yeah.
And the passage from a church singer to a professional singer, how was it?
Well, the thing is that I actually while I was in church, I also did musical theater. I sang in high school and sang in college, and so it was the creative process. It was more about the creative process, and but understanding the foundation of the why you do something and how you do something. Because there were some things that I was not going to participate in just to make money in an industry that could really taint you if you're not careful. I've never gotten caught up in the negative things that can kind of consume you. I've lost friends to who participated in activities that were just contrary to who they were, really. And so for me, the transition was smooth because I understood the foundation. I come from a very strong family of black people whose lineage and background says you're going to be educated, you're going to be, always know that you have your name, and when you lose the impact of your name, then you've lost everything. And so for me, when I moved, I always was aware and cognizant of the fact that I had to be very, very, very intentional in honoring the Lynch name and what that looked like in the community. And so it was easy because I had the gift, but it was made easier because I understood where my gifts came from too.
And so what would you think would be the main principles that you got from that experience with the church?
Is work hard, be okay with working hard, but standing on your truths, understanding that you don't have to compromise who you are in order to be successful. I think a lot of times, and I've seen creative people just kind of succumb to what other people have thought that they should do, and then they do it, and they lose themselves. The authenticity of their gifts and the actual impact of their gifts are just kind of compromised. And so for me, just having the foundation and having the understanding of the why you're in this position, because a lot of people have gifts. A lot of people are not given platforms to be able to have that gift seen. And so I was given an opportunity to have a stage to be able to do and deliver my gifts, which was, to me, just kind of a blessing. It was a gift and it was a blessing. And so I didn't take that lightly. I've got young people looking at me. I've got, older people looking at me. But I've got a community of people looking at me who are saying, young girls, they're looking and saying, I want to be like her.
That's a lot of responsibility.
It's a lot of responsibility. And the thing is that you just kind of do it knowing that you do have a responsibility. I think you have to be very, very intentional in how you move, but you also have to be acknowledge that your gifts, one of the things they say, your gifts will make room for you. My gifts made room for me on stages and platforms that I had I never thought I'd be in Brazil, never. And so I counted, it's just like, wow, I'm here. So I have a responsibility to be my best self while I'm here. And so I don't want to do anything to diminish that. And so wherever I've traveled, whether it was South Africa, whether it was Europe, wherever, Central America, South, it did not matter. It does not matter as long as you understand the core of who you are and the gifts and what they expect of you. They want my music. They don't want all the shenanigans. They don't want all the other stuff. They want to hear and see you perform and do the gifts and see the gifts that they know you for. And that's important to me.
And in that sense, you're also a role model.
Yeah. You know what? And I have no problem with it. Originally, you think role model, but I understand what that looks like because, see, growing up, I had role models like I love Gladys Knight. I mean, she personified who I aspired to be. She was a classy lady. She was articulate, and she never ever got caught up in mess. Aretha, never ever. Dion, never ever got caught up in a whole lot of unnecessary, trivial stuff. And their gifts were so on, just on the stage. And that was, to me, very important. Yeah.
What would you say was the most significant moment, aside from your many real awards, the gold disc, etc., but most significant moments of your career?
I've had like really small little pockets of happy places for me in my career. And I think one of the most important ones for me was when I was able to be one of the first artists to go into South Africa after apartheid ended. And they allowed American artists to go over. And I had no idea of the magnitude of my music in a country that had been so oppressed for so long. And so I was able to go before Mandela was actually elected president in the transition, to be able to to share music and be on stages, it was amazing. For me, it was amazing because I'd seen the shift, and I've been back subsequently a lot of times. They call me the daughter of South Africa because of my support of the country, but also some of the education components. I like going into the townships and villages and work with education facilities that are designed to help the marginalized and disenfranchised populations to become acquainted with arts.
The townships.
Yes. And that is important because they are the least among us, so to speak. I mean, they're the ones generally who would not normally have access to arts. And so arts-based education is very important to me, and I know how it's impacted me. And so I would say that experience has probably been the most significant, but then also being able to receive my first gold award with my parents present. I never anticipated that, and it means a lot to me because as my parents are aging, my dad is going through some health issues, and my mom's getting older. Just to have that experience and that memory of them being present at a time of change for me was really, really important. It's been very important.
One of the things that you're curious about is how you change from being a singer, composer, to an educator.
Yeah, the thing is, my grandmother, many, many years ago, before I even graduated college, said to me, she said, "You're going to be a teacher." And I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "No, I'm not. They don't make any money." But she saw something in me that led her to say that. And I loved my grandmother, my father's mom. I loved my grandmother, and my mom's mom. They've always said you have the capacity. I just had to do it differently. The funny thing is, I started out. One of my mentors was Dr. Herring was really kind of instrumental in saying. She said, "I see you being able to do this." So I worked with a group of students who were appointed to they had to come to my program. They had some issues with the law, and she said, "You can work with this group." I didn't think that I could, but I did. And it was kind of my first, outside of music, the first time I had the opportunity to actually be in a classroom environment. And I saw that I had the ability to do it. And I saw lives changing, young people who had never, ever been encouraged to do anything beyond mess up. Because they didn't have the family support, they didn't have the financial support, but the legal system said, "We see something in you, and we're going to make this happen, where we get you the education you need to be able to move on and be better in society." And so that's when my other life took hold. And ever since then, I've worked really hard. I've won state awards. I didn't plan on it. I just won a national award, a NISOT award for excellence, and had not planned on. That's a big thing among colleges in the United States. And so I just really want to encourage people to understand that how you start is not necessarily how you have to finish. And so if I've got to be that conduit, that pathway, or be part of the bridge that gets you across, then I'm really excited about that. When they're talking about, working on a PhD is not an easy task. And so I'm on pause now because it's, for me, I need time to really kind of revel in this other part of my life. And education is good, but I need the music too. And that's my balance. And the college knows that. They know that I need to have my escapes into the creative world that I call music and that I call stages abroad, that allow me to be able to have I decompress, and then I'm able to come back just rejuvenated and revived, because I'm able to bring something to the population that anyone else wouldn't, so they support me, and I love that about what I do.
We're going to have a small intermission, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. We're having a conversation with singer, composer, and educator Sybil Lynch. Sybil, your music, in a certain way, has passed over the frontiers. People from different countries, like in Brazil, they don't understand the words you're saying, but they feel.
Yeah.
They feel the sentiment that is there, that you can't pass. A beautiful voice, beautiful music, and a feeling.
Yeah.
Could you give us a sense of that, singing something for us?
It's so funny. I can do that. Don't make me over now that you know how I adore you. Don't make me over now that I do anything for you. Yes.
Thank you. But back to education. Are you feeling that is something changing in that environment with all these efforts that have been done?
You know, I see a resurgence of young people impacting our society in a major, major way. There's a real, they're very, very, they're driven, and it reminds me of the stories that I heard of the civil rights movement. They are fighting to be able to have rights, not just for them, but for other people. And so it's important. I mean, we've had so many in the U.S. in particular. We've had a lot of shootings in these schools, and it rallied. We
know exactly what it is.
Yes,
here in Brazil.
Exactly. And the thing is, so to see them they're saying, no, we're not going to stand. You're not going to keep killing us. You're not going to act as if gun control is not important. You're not going to act like all lives matter. You know, we have the Black Lives Matter movement, but that it's also, and the Me Too movement. It's about taking back the integrity of being what it is to be human, being civil and respectful, regardless of what you look like, how you love, where you come from. And I'm seeing young people kind of really on the forefront. But I'm also seeing a shift because when we elected Barack Obama in the United States, there was a shift in attitudes. Everyone was not happy. Everyone, and they still aren't happy. And now we have a political energy in the country that's very divisive, and it's not about all people, and it's unfortunate, but that's our reality. And so it's going to take young people and progressive people who are determined to impact change in a different way, making that happen. And so I'm seeing younger people, I'm seeing young people and people of color who are determined that they are going to be the difference. And they stand and they march and they speak up and they are advocates for their own situations. And that's important. And then people are buying into it because they know that if we don't do this, then our tomorrows are not going to look like they need to look. And so I'm seeing a shift, and they're becoming more educated. You have more people of color and women who are becoming more educated. And so women are forced to be reckoned with when they are empowered differently from that perspective. But they also, it's allowing access to opportunities. And so I see a shift, and I'm hoping that I see another one the next election.
And you've mentioned something that, unfortunately, that's the linkage between our societies, because here in Brazil, a week ago, we had a black family shot 80 times in their car by army soldiers.
Yes.
No?
Yeah.
And that's basically the same thing.
Yes, it is. It is the same.
It is
the same thing.
It is the same thing. But here in Brazil, we're having something very interesting the last 20 years, especially after the adoption of affirmative action for public universities.
Yes.
You know, the public universities are the best universities in Brazil. They're totally free.
Yes.
But we used to go there, and a couple of blacks were there. But now, many of them.
Yes.
And they're creating new movements, and movements led by women.
Yes.
Especially led by women, like kinky empowerment.
Yes.
2 years ago, we had a march of black women. 20,000 black women at the beach of Copacabana.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's something. What do you think of that?
I think that's amazing. You know, the thing is that we know, the bottom line is that women, society would not exist without us. You know, that's just the nature. But it's also the nurturing nature of who we are. We have a tendency, we don't want to exclude, we want to include. I think it's our nature to be that because of the nature of the whole estrogen. It's just, we are mothers without being mothers oftentimes. And so I think that it's going to be important to stay on that trajectory where it's like you acknowledge that there's an injustice here and keep fighting to be able to turn that around. And if it's women, whoever it is, if it's women, but if it's people who understand the mission of what you're trying to do to accomplish a level playing field, then that's going to be really, really important. So I think that it's amazing because we've got a lot of, we've got, you know, the Black Girls Rock, and we've got, of course, Black Lives Matter, which is men and women, but we also have a whole lot of women empowerment type of initiatives in the U.S. And so I think that's going to be important because you've got to start somewhere. So if it happens to be women, women are mothers, mothers. Women are grandmothers. They're aunts. They're sisters.
And they suffer from double discrimination.
Yes, yes. And so I think that it's going to be really cool to see what that 20,000 turns into. Down the line, it's going to be a lot more. That beach is going to be filled for miles. Yes.
As I've told you before the program, I'm involved in this exchange of HBCUs,
yes.
One of them especially, Southern University,
yes.
with Brazilian universities. Our idea is to get Brazilian students there, American students here, and we have a lot of things to share.
Yes, yes.
Culturally,
yes.
We have a common ancestry. What do you think of that?
I think that it's important. I think that globally, we have to. That's one of the things I really push. I don't have any children. I have nieces and nephews who I absolutely adore, and I talk to them about the global idea of globalization and what that looks like. In order for us to be competitive, in order for us to have expanded mindsets, we have to think globally. We can't not think, regionally. We can't think nationally. We have to think globally. We have to think internationally, and so I think that it's going to be important that we do have these exchanges amongst institutions where there's a commonality. It makes sense. It makes a great deal of sense. And so I think that if we continue to do more of that type of stuff with our HBCUs, we've got a number of HBCUs in the United States.
More than 100.
Yes, yes. And they were, a lot of people don't realize that the nature of why we had to have HBCUs is because we were not allowed into other institutions. And so we created our own source of educational opportunity and access.
In a certain way, it was the positive side
yes.
of Jim Crow.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was funny because I heard a lot of times they said that when integration did occur, it wasn't as happy ha ha he he as everyone thought it was, because it created some other factors that kind of impeded blacks' ability to be able to move. But I am a strong proponent of the HBCU. I believe in education, but I'm a strong proponent of HBCUs because I understand why they exist and why they were important, and they still are important. My institution, my alma mater, produces some of the top engineers, black engineers, but engineers in the country. We are very, very, we are competitive. We are a strong research-based institution, and we do a lot of work to help be able to change the landscape in various areas through agricultural and technology, through engineering, through business. And so I'm excited about the idea of having these pockets of brother sisterhood kind of missions across the oceans and across the seas, and I think that it's going to be important for the idea of globalization and just understanding what we look like as a community of people, not just American people, not just Brazilian people, but just as people.
And diaspora.
And the diaspora, exactly, yes.
Yeah, and it's very interesting when we take a look at history, because Brazil and the United States have always played something like a game of mirrors. One evaluating itself against the image projected by the other. There were Americans, the white elites in the United States, who saw Brazil as an example of the degeneration of caused by miscegenation.
Wow.
At the same time, there were African Americans who thought Brazil was the example.
Yes, yes, yes. Isn't that amazing how you can have two diverging thought processes going on, and you're sitting thinking, really? So it depends on your perspective. What it is you want to see.
That's right. That's right.
It is what do you want to see? We can find fault in something, but we can also find beauty in something. But it's what do we really want to see?
Yeah, there were those African Americans who came to Brazil. They were discriminated in hotels, in restaurants, etc. But they kept the idea that Brazil was a racial paradise because they needed it.
Yes, yes,
to present
absolutely.
As a counterexample.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing is that we I always say that when we are forced into certain situations, what I find that people of color have a tendency, we make lemonade out of lemon. We see the lemon, we like lemons there, okay, there's just lemons. But we'll make lemonade to quench the thirst, okay, if we have to, because we know that we have to make the best of the situations a lot of times.
So, all your experience as a singer, a role model, an educator, what is the message that you could pass to Afro-Brazilian youngs?
I always say, speak to your truths. Understand what your truths are and be okay with walking in that. Everyone's not going to understand you. Everyone's not going to get you. But when you speak and walk in your truths and you are authentic in that, the best can come from it. No one can ever question that was who you were, that's who you are, because they will get the genuineness of and the essence of who you are from that place that you offer up. And so be authentic, speak to your truths, and understand that there are going to be people who are different, and they're not going to agree with you. But how do you stand in the midst of that? Who is it you are in the midst of that? When you're given no's, when you know you should have gotten a yes. Okay? When you're given a yes, when you might have accepted that a no was okay. How are you going to be able to be okay being your true self when life happens and there's a shift? How do you react, respond, and relate in that situation in that time? And that's important.
Could you give us a final song?
Okay, let me see. Underneath my feet, I feel the crystal sand. Walk along the beach, wish I had your hand. Thinking about you, want you here with me. I can't imagine how this love will be. We'll take a walk in the moonlight. I'll give you all of my love. Oh, oh. We'll take a walk in the moonlight. I'll give you all of my love. Oh, oh.
Thank you very much. Your presence in Brazil is always something very good for all lovers of good music.
Yes,
That's
yes,
what we
yes.
are.
Thank you.
Thank you. I talked to the educator, singer, and songwriter Sybil Lynch. And to review this interview and all the others, just go to www.cultne.com.br. Thanks for the hearing, and until the next program.